total elimination of bacterial contamination may not be possible, but there are options to reduce the risk of contamination in the feed raw materials and incomplete feeds.
Welcome to the Feed Science Podcast. I'm your host, Ron Hollenbeck, and today we're joined by Ying Chen and Flavio Longo from Eastman Chemical Company. Ying, if you would want to start, just give us a brief background on yourself, anything you'd like to share, and then when she is completed, Flavio, if you would do the same.
Thank you, Ron. Right, nice to be in this session here. My name is Ying Chen. I'm from Eastman Chemical Company, and I work there as a senior application development and tech service manager. And my training background is mainly about monogastric nutrition physiology. And also now I focus my research work in Eastman on the gut health related additive development and R&D work.
Hi. Thank you all. And my name is Flavio Longo. I'm an animal scientist with a Master Science and PhD in animal nutrition. I'm currently the technical service manager of Eastman too, and I've been working for all the Latin America region. And that's it. I'm here to share my knowledge and to discuss this nice topic with you all.
Eastman serves veterinarians and nutritionists in agrochemical and animal health industries by helping them select, evaluate, and implement innovative nutritional programs. Eastman works with your team to customize your gut health approach in feed and water. Eastman's approach addresses nutritional and bacterial challenges and finds new ingredient preservation and hygiene solutions. Explore ways to accelerate and innovate your programs. Contact the animal nutrition team at eastman.com.
Great. Well, thank you both for joining us today. Ying, if you'd like to, just kind of give us a brief overview of the topics you'd like to discuss today, and then we'll get into it.
Sounds great. So for today's session, Flavio and I, we would like to share some of our knowledge experience on the topic related to strategies to tackle bacterial contamination challenges in feed and feed raw materials.
Good. So Flavio, do you want to start in on the overview of contamination issues in feed?
Sure. Yep. To start to talk about this topic, it's important to mention some statistics, right? It's important to relate the feed to the food chain, right? So that we know that there are foodborne disease around the world. That's 10% of the people suffer of some gastroenteritis related to the food ingestion. This means around 420,000 deaths. That 30% of these deaths are with kids with less than 5 years old. If we consider the Brazilian statistics, that's a lot regional. So different region, different statistics. 20% of this impact these diseases, the foodborne diseases are related to animal protein food, and the most prevalent bacteria related to this protein food is Salmonella. And if you go to the US, for example, 153 million people can suffer a Salmonella disease per year, which means around 57,000 of deaths, and 20% of them related to animal food origin. So it's important to connect this food importance of the control of contamination in the feed, because feed is it's an important contamination vector within the animal production, right? Especially when we talk about the highly intensive systems with very well established standards like of biosecurity, like the poultry meat production chain. And if you use a salmonella as a reference of a bacteria inside of this chain, we know that's very difficult to be controlled. Salmonella can stay in this environment for months to years in different materials and mainly in the dust that is everywhere in the production plants. We have the favorable conditions. If we have the favorable conditions to this bacteria to grow, they will start to grow in the system. So even small numbers of salmonella in feed or raw materials is a risk. There is a potential threat and must be controlled, right? If we see the feed plants that we have nowadays in our in the world, there are multiple limitations to microbiological control, right? There are open doors, there are birds and rodents present there, looking for food, right? Food for this type of animals, the kind of animals. There are dust from ingredients and in the process. There are operators moving around the feed plant, so can carry the contamination from one part for the other part. Inside of the process, we have equipment, dryers, coolers, augers, all the equipment that has difficult points with difficulty to clean. So we have inside of the equipment dust, we have biofilm, and we have the bacteria there. And once the salmonella or any other bacteria is inside of the system, the cross contamination can happen with the environment and the feed and the raw materials, and could persist for a long time if we don't take measures. Uh, and to get it worse, if the feed is contaminated, could be spread for all the animal farms because the feed plant distribute the feed for different animal farms, so it can reach the food chain. And inside of the feed plants, we have the raw materials that has the risk to have contamination at many stages of production, like the growing crops, like in soybean meals crops, shipping process, logistics chain, like the trucks that carry the products to inside of the feed plants, the processing in the plants, oil extraction, for example, and the storage conditions. All these stages we have risks of contaminations. And for example, in terms of different raw materials, we can see levels of contamination around 10% in animal protein meals and around 5% in vegetable protein meals using soybean meals as reference. So it's more than important that measures to reduce this risk and the levels of contamination of raw materials and feed. Uh, it's mandatory we have to do it for to make animal a safe animal production to the market.
Good. Do you see are there many differences in the contamination levels of different ingredients in different countries, or is it pretty consistent?
Uh, there is a difference, but if you consider the main countries, the main production system like U.S., Brazil, and Europe is a little bit is quite similar because of the production system, because of the intensive of biosecurity that we have, the intensive of cares that they have in the and one of the topics is sampling, right? The more you sampling, more uh, positive samples you can find, right? But so countries or companies that invest in sampling, they can find more positive samples in different raw materials, but they can also have the advantage to have the information to run some actions to reduce this contamination levels, right? So it can vary, but if you consider high levels of production, very related biosecurity companies, it's quite similar, or countries and companies. I'm talking about companies and countries in general.
Sure. Yes. Yep. Okay. Ying, what tools would you use to help control this and prevent spread?
Yeah, Rob, that's a really good question. So although the total elimination of bacterial contamination may not be possible, but there are options to reduce the risk of contamination in the feed raw materials and incomplete feeds. So first, it always starts with prevention, where the implementation of an effective biosecurity plan that will help reduce the risk of contamination being introduced and spread throughout the feed manufacturing facility. And then based on the contamination severity and probability, mitigation steps can be further implemented. And in general, physical and chemical measures can be used to mitigate bacterial contaminations. So when we speak about physical measures, that include irradiation and thermal or heating processing. So heating processing of animal feeds is traditionally done via pelleting, whereas PET and aqua feeds are commonly produced via extrusion. It is important to know that heat processing can greatly reduce the contamination level, but it is really a point-in-time strategy. So there is still possibility that post-processing contamination can happen. And that means following the heating processing, cross-contamination may still happen further downstream. So in that case, the use of some chemical additives, either alone or in combination with those other mitigation techniques, has become more of interest to help decrease the risk of cross-contamination and even recontamination. And then commonly used chemical additives include formaldehyde, organic acids, and more recent research also evaluating some of those phytogenic compounds and organic derivatives, such as monoglycerides.
You had mentioned heat processing as a tool, and yeah, I've heard that in my whole career from a pelleting standpoint. I mean, I've always said you need to be 180 degrees Fahrenheit or higher to kill any pathogens that may be in the feed. But um, have what's your thoughts, or have you done any research on post pelleting? We heat it up, we add moisture, goes into the cooler. Um, I mean, from an operation standpoint and a cost control standpoint, we want to take out the moisture that we added in the conditioning and pelleting process, but from a financial standpoint, we don't want to take out any more. Do you, from a post pelleting contamination perspective, um, are we doing the right thing in the feed mill to prevent future contamination, or should we reevaluate the cooling and drying processes that are currently utilized in feed manufacturing?
So yeah, for that question, I think it's important to have a standardized procedure to follow going through that conditioning and then post pelleting, that cooling steps, to make sure that we have the good quality of the feed that we're producing. But indeed, through this process, there are potential risks to cause that cross-contamination or recontamination. So I think there is, like also Flavio mentioned, the sampling steps is important to help us to have that understanding, which steps or like in those several steps to identify where potentially we could have that kind of risk, and that's gonna help us to further develop that kind of like control plan, which step we need to pay most attention to adjust if needed for this bacterial control to address that contamination issue.
If I can add a comment, just a comment that by experience that I have seen in some feed plants, the cooling system is one of the most important place to be controlled the cross contamination, the recontamination of the pellet feed, the heat treated feed, because most of the feed plants they collect the air from the environment of the feed plant, and the air of the environment is contaminated. So you just finish the treatment, the heat treatment, and you eliminate the contamination, and you put the air contaminated again in the pellet to cool the pellet, right? So it's a very important topic to be observed by the feed manager, where this air is coming. It's in the top, it's in the bottle, it's close to the place that we have dusty. So it's one of the topics that it's important to highlight in this topic. Thank you for the question. It's good to share.
Sure, thank you. You had mentioned different treatments: formaldehyde, monoglycerides, organic acids. What what are the advantages, disadvantages of each of those treatment methods?
If you agree, I can start to talk about the formaldehyde treatment.
Sure.
I believe that there is no discussion about the effectiveness of the formaldehyde product. Formaldehyde works in a wide range of microorganisms, including the salmonella. That's our reference. Formaldehyde was used for a long time to preserve feed and raw material around the world. And even the formaldehyde options that we have in the market as product, they are nowadays in combination with organic acids, like propionic acid, for example, or even bioactives that the producers, the companies that supply formaldehyde-based product are trying to improve the stability and efficacy of the product even more and more to reduce the vapors, to trying to do the best of them. Uh, but although of use it for decades and people knows how to use the formaldehyde, there are some concerns regarding the handling and exposition of the formaldehyde. Right, in Europe, Europe was the first region to conclude in 2014 that formaldehyde was carcinogen by inhalation, right? Associate formaldehyde to leukemia, some leukemia problems, and the chemical agents from Europe established that formaldehyde was carcinogenic and mutagenic and a harm of inhalation, right? So taking account all these adverse effects on health by handling the product, by handling formaldehyde, associated to the precautionary principle of protection of works health in Europe, and also the availability of some alternatives. The Europe was the first region to ban, to deny the authorization of formaldehyde for feed, uh, for feeds. And since this happened, there was an impact in a global feed industry. Because some countries still allow it to be used, the formaldehyde under certain levels of cautions. But Europe is a key opinion leader in the animal protein food chain. So it's also an important importer and import all the meat under their regulation. So companies that are producing animal protein to export to Europe must produce without following their regulation. So they must produce without formaldehyde. So several alternatives and actions are under development to control bacterial contamination without formaldehyde nowadays, and both in feed and raw materials. For sure, following the local regulations, because regulations in Brazil is different from the US and from Europe. As an example, in Europe, the formic acid and the sodium formate, they were authorized as feed hygiene conditions enhancers, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I know formaldehyde products have been banned in some countries. They're still able to be used in the United States anyway.
that's right.
And I've been in. I don't have a lot of experience with honestly with this topic at all. But I have been in some feed plants in the U.S. that use a pathogen control product that, and I don't know what percentage or anything that, but it did have some formaldehyde in it. And you know, in the plant, right near the mixer where it is applied, I mean, there was no odor or anything. I mean, everything is sealed, and from a worker standpoint, um, certainly didn't appear to be any issues in that particular plant anyway. So
Hmm.
is the way it was. I'm just trying to think through the reasoning behind banning it in Europe as an example. That I understand if it's not handled and controlled properly, uh, it's some bad stuff. But um, from the little bit of exposure I've had, that it appears that if it's handled and vented and everything sealed correctly, there's not any issues from the worker standpoint. Just be interested in your thoughts and experience with that at different companies or different countries, or just what your experience is.
Yeah. Yeah, the more and more the companies that have products, formaldehyde-based products, they are
Mhm.
investing in the application system, right? To really apply the product very well, to make sure that the product will you connect with the ingredients and be stable, and to make sure that the vapors will not leave the system. Uh, but there is this ban from Europe based on the risk that exists of the formaldehyde vapors on the air and the exposition for the workers. So it's banned for their market, and if we want to reach their market, we have to follow their rules, right? So this is why there is this um, space for alternatives of formaldehyde products, right? Because of this request of the market. It's a market demand.
Sure. Yep. Good. Thank you. What are the advantages and disadvantages of organic acids?
Sure. So I will take that question. So speaking of organic acids and even some those derivatives, so the most commonly used organic acids incorporate into feed or raw materials include formic, propionic, and lactic acids. And all those organic acids have been shown to be effective to reduce bacterial contamination, such as Salmonella, as example, in different raw material and feed matrix. the proposed mode of action of organic acids to mitigate the bacterial contamination suggests that organic acids can penetrate the cell membrane of bacteria. And once these acids enter into the bacterial cells, they can dissociate it and release the proton, which causes the reduction of the intracellular pH inside of bacteria. And that's going to disrupt the DNA protein synthesis inside bacteria and eventually inhibit the bacterial proliferation. And as for derivatives, monoglycerides, as one of those organic acid derivatives, are also particularly effective at controlling harmful bacteria. So monoglycerides are formed from the chemical reaction where glycerol transforms organic acids to their corresponding esters. And monoglycerides are generally easier to handle at manufacturing facilities because of the reduced acidic odor and corrosiveness. And comparing to the organic acids, the corresponding monoglycerides even require a lower concentration to be effective against bacteria. And in addition, research has shown that combining a mixture of organic acids and monoglycerides has synergistic effects, and that even results in improved efficacy to inhibit bacteria contamination compared to use organic acids or monoglycerides by themselves. And comparing to formaldehyde, organic acids, and monoglycerides, or combination of both, they are safer alternatives and still being effective. And then when utilize organic acids and monoglycerides for bacterial contamination control, it is really important to choose the right organic acids or monoglycerides, and also to define that application methodology and the optimal application rate based on the target performance and acceptable cost for the specific feed raw materials or complete feed.
What kind of applications would you use for organic acids and monoglycerides?
So there's kind of like a broad spectrum applications can be utilized. The organic acids and monoglycerides can be utilized for those applications. So Flavio, I will let you to talk about some of those raw materials that more plant-based, based on your experience first.
Yeah, we one of the we can use the organic acids in raw materials, but we have to consider some steps. We have to have some considerations in how to decide which organic acid and how to apply the organic acid in raw materials. For example, we have to understand the supplier of the raw material, which type of supplier we have, which conditions we have in this supplier of the raw materials. We have to consider the risks of contamination of that we have in this, the levels of contaminations that we could find in this raw material, and also the inclusion rates in the final diets. I mean, the volumes that we will deal with this raw material inside of the feed meals, right? So we have to consider all these factors to consider if we treat or not this one specific raw material. In the case of soybean meal, it's a very nice example to represent some other vegetal protein meals. Like we have suppliers that have very high standards of production and process to the nutritional values, but only part of them are really prepared to work on reducing the risks of salmonella, for example. Right? They have a lot of challenges to adapt the processing plant to reduce the risks of salmonella. The risks are around all throughout the whole production chain. Since they receive the processing plant, they receive the soybean meal from crops from the field. that was or harvest in the dusty in the field. During the harvesting, there is a risk to contaminate the soybean. During the processing, if you add more or less, it depends on the process you have. You can have higher or lower risks of contamination, and mainly during the transportation and storage. We know that to storage soybean meal is not easy to have controls to avoid the contamination of any kind of bacteria, right? And in the case of someone in soybean meal, we have around 5% average of incidence of salmonella. But we have to consider that we have 20% of the inclusion rates in the final diets. So very high volumes in the feed plant. Uh, so there is a risk factor that we have to consider. So it's important to consider the chemical treatment for soybean meal, for example, both organic acid or monoglycerides or blends of them. We have to use these products to mitigate these risks that we can see. There are a lot of options in the market of organic acids, and uh, uh, they varies based on the countries or regions regulations. Some countries that are is not allowed to use some specific organic acids. Some others is allowed. Uh, the, the the animal production system we have to consider if it's possible to apply one product or not, and also commercial conditions, right? If we have options cheaper than others, we have to test, we have to evaluate, and we have to check the efficacy. Most of all places that we have for raw materials too. We have the combinations of heat process and organic acids to protect against the recontamination, right? So with the same as feed. But when you talk about the organic acid by himself, I can tell you that as Ying mentioned, uh, formic acid is very well established as an effective organic acid against several bacteria, including the Salmonella, and mainly uh, formic acid blends based on formic acid, organic acid blends based on formic acid, because if we do blends, we try to find synergistic effects of this different organic acids. We can protect the raw material for a wide range of microorganisms. These blends are, for example, blends of formic acid and propionic acid. So we can use these different blends for different applications. We have different formulas for specific applications, specific needs. So that we have to consider once we decide to use the organic acid. There are several studies, publications of different combinations of organic acids in the literature, in the market. You can see different answers on efficacy for Salmonella on vegetable protein meals. Uh, Depends on the strain that you are considering in the evaluation, depends on the level of the contamination of the bacteria or the Salmonella, the length of the storage that you have of this raw material, the time after application you have to manage. If you have time, you can go for one type of product. You have less time, you have to consider other type of product, or even a higher inclusion rate. So the formula and the physical form of the acid interferes in the result. If it's free, if it's salt, it's buffered as salt. If it's using other technology like monoglycerides, uh, and also the inclusion rate. But in general, what we can see as results is 1 to log reduction in salmonella with rates, inclusion rates up to 1% after 3 days of treatment in general, right? We have some recent findings from some trials developed that we could see some formulas of organic acids with results higher than 3 log reduction for Salmonella in Bandaca. That's one of the most prevalent in soybean meal around the world. And considering lower inclusions rates, close to 0.25% of inclusions, and also always considering the 3 days of after treatment. So there is a movement. It's a live market. It's a live. Each day you have a new product, a new formula in the market, available in the market. It's important that people involved in decision inside of the soybean meal plant, processing plant, to have the know-how, to use their experience, to consider the levels of contamination, the challenge that they have, check the products available, and try to find the best results for their conditions. This is, I believe, that it's most important for the treatment with organic acids in raw materials.
So just to add on that, organic acids and some of those derivatives can be also used for bacterial contamination control in animal protein raw material. So animal byproducts such as fish meal, chicken byproduct meal, chicken bone meal, and some other rendered animal protein can be heavily contaminated with bacteria such as Salmonella from the source material. And then when this raw material, those byproducts are used as feed ingredient, they can introduce Salmonella and then result in contaminated final feed product. So here, organic acids and some of those derivatives have been proven to be effective solutions to control those bacterial contamination. So our research experience has demonstrated that blends of organic acids are more effective to inhibit Salmonella, as example, in the rendered animal protein meal than single acids, kind of like similar finding as Flavio mentioned for some of those plant-based raw materials such as soybean meal. And such findings show that this potential synergistic effects when you combine different organic acids than just using single acids. We also did some recent research in poultry meal, and we noticed that when we combine specific organic acids and monoglycerides, we saw better efficacy. And such combination of acids and monoglycerides showed lower concentration is needed than acids alone to achieve that targeted performance. And also that bacterial inhibition effects of the combination of acids and monoglycerides lasted longer than the acids alone. So that's kind of like now the trend of our research. We want to further identify what are the optimal formula or what is the optimal combination of those different organic acids, derivatives, including monoglycerides, for the specific targets, for the specific application.
Is there a difference in application if you're applying those products in a complete feed ration versus individual ingredients, or is it similar?
There will be some difference there, since those different raw material or the complete feed, they have different properties, like the protein level, the fat level, and also the contamination can be different. Like some of those raw materials maybe has higher contamination level in specific bacteria. So there we all need to consider those different factors together when we try to decide what is the right treatment, what is even the right formula of those different organic acids or derivatives to use for that specific application based on the contamination level and also the specific matrix.
I'll talk about the chemical treatment that the organic acid is really important, even associated with some other tools related to the biosecurity, right? We have to guarantee that we protect this feed against the recontamination, even if the raw materials were already treated, right? So we have to guarantee the residual protection. So this is why it's really important to consider this organic acid treatment. There are some options of products to do this treatment. There is the same behavior, the same answers that we can find in the raw materials, different formulas, different results, uh, and probably the best formula to control the salmonella in soybean meal is not the best option to the feed. We have seen it in some trials that we must consider that some organic acids and monoglycerides, uh, that in the case of monoglycerides they are stable, they have very high stability under different pH and different mode of actions. So this combination of organic acids that you are treating the feed could have some nutritional effect also to the animal. Could create a gastric barrier to other contaminations. Could help in protein digestion and performance and so on. So it's important to consider the formula that you are using in the diet, right? Uh, as results, again, the same as in raw materials, you can find uh, in the literature, you can find in the articles and papers published that you can reach more than 3 logs of reduction in salmonella with organic acids. And some recent trials that we developed in some labs in some labs in Brazil that we developed, that we could find inclusion rates at last close to 0.5%, a reduction of 3 logs of one Salmonella typhimurium for 72 hours, for 48 hours. And if we consider a different Salmonella, for example, the Salmonella Senftenberg, that's more resistant, higher levels of product and time is necessary to have the same protection. So this is why it's a science, right? What to use as option and how to use. One of the topics that you mentioned is the application for feed. Maybe is easier than for raw materials because we have the spray, the nozzles inside of a mixer. Considering that we have for the raw materials, we have spray in the conveyor belt, using sometimes the auger to mix and transport the product treated, comparing to the mixers with a controlled volume that we have inside of a feed plant, that you know exactly the volume that we need to treat, and we know exactly the time that we have to mix the product. So it's easier to treat because homogeneity in this case of using not only organic acid but also formaldehyde, homogeneity is key. You have to apply homogeneously the products to have very good results. And in summary, in terms of diets treatment to control contamination, uh, there are uh, there are options of organic acid blends and derivatives as the monoglycerides that are effective with or without the thermal treatment. The success will depend on the knowledge and the experience in the field of the decision maker, the feed mill. They have to be aware what they are using in their feeds, and it's key to have the quality and the production managers keeping continuously improving the knowledge, keeping informed, updated about the new developments of products, and to help them to the day-to-day decisions of what kind of products they will use or not they will apply in their specific conditions.
Yeah, earlier, you mentioned you were talking about sampling, and if I understood your meaning correctly, basically, um, if our sampling within the feed plant is always negative, then we're not sampling the right places. We're not trying hard enough, so to speak, to find it. What are some of the areas in the feed plant that your experience has shown that should be sampled that aren't being sampled?
To find
Yeah,
salmonella.
to find
Yeah,
contamination.
all the places where you have difficult when you have accumulated feed or accumulated dust, when it's difficult to reach, to clean,
Mhm.
or in all the system there are different uh, points that you can choose to do samples, and, different feed plants, different systems. You have different points to consider, but also you have to sample in the cooler, in the top of the cooler.
Mhm.
You have the 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 air, and you have the vapors, the difference between the temperatures. You have the humidity in the top of the cooler, and you have dusty. And in this place, it's also easy to, if the problem is the recontamination from the air, you can find positive samples in this place. So for different feed plants, different points that locals that you have to consider for a sampling program. But in general, the places the people of the feed plant knows the places where it is difficult to clean, the places where it's easy to accumulate feed, or accumulate dusty, or accumulate residues of products. It's probably the easier to find a positive sample.
Yeah, I agree. We probably know where those areas are and don't.
Yeah,
Cleaning the top of the cooler, especially in a counterflow style cooler. Yeah, we don't go in the coolers very often as a
yeah,
general rule. So certainly opportunities for bacterial growth in those areas. You've got the warmness, the moisture. I mean, hell, it's probably ideal climate for bacterial growth.
sure, sure.
Um, I've really enjoyed these discussions today. Is there anything else in summary that you want to discuss to wrap things up, or do we move into the final three questions we like to ask each time in each podcast? So we're ready to move on.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
It's time for our famous three. Evonik Animal Nutrition is committed to ensure food security and safety while reducing the ecological footprint of animal farming. Its products and services use evidence-based solutions that seek to promote animal welfare and reduce reliance on natural resources. All this is underpinned by long-standing industry partnerships and deep customer understanding. Evonik's focus on efficiency, sustainable, healthy nutrition, and collaborations with livestock farming partners creates value for customers and consumers.
The first question is, what is kind of a go-to resource that has been of benefit to you throughout your career related to either bacteria growth, feed milling, anything relative to the ag industry?
Well, in my case, there are several options that you can find good, very high quality information about this segment. I focus on some universities of reference in that has been working with processing and feed. Some scientific magazines. We have different ones in different areas for poultry and swine that has specific topics related to microbiological control and microbiological uh, uh, contamination, and there is some of them, and also the regulation associations, right? From different countries, the European Food Safety Authority, FDA, some Brazilian institutions like Embrapa and Ministry of Agriculture that has some publications about this topic. That there is a mix of options that we can find very good, very high level information about this topic, in my opinion.
Good. Okay, the second question, kind of similar to the first, but a kind of a go-to resource that may be outside of, of pathogen control, outside of agriculture. Ying, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So based on my experience, I took some of those trainings, and I also still use those reference materials on the topic of social style, and I found that as really helpful. So that basically talk about the characteristic, and then kind of like different styles of people. So those information help me when I interact with different colleagues, coworkers, even like customers, clients. I could, based on those kind of like general principle, to identify what kind of style they belong to, and then that helped me to kind of like develop some general rules to help me communicate with them. I think that is a good topic to have some knowledge on. And then, yeah, we all know communication is so important for our day-to-day work, and also for the general work that we're doing in the industry, and even personal life.
Yeah, good. Last question. Either one of you can take it, tag team it, however you want to do it. But in your opinion, what separates people from being successful or less successful in in their professional discipline?
Well, there are some skills, right, that is important to be successful. It's a lot. Um, uh, it's a lot uh, particular, right? Some people has some opinions, different opinions, but I believe that attitude is mandatory, and people has attitude since they are studying. They are looking for solutions, looking for things to do, and to find solutions in general. It's really important, and also I can mention some skills like empathy, to consider the environment, consider the people that you are interacting, and also communication is important to have as skills to be some of them, right? I don't know if you have a different opinion. Ying.
So for me, I think one of those skills or characteristic is important. That is really to have an open mind. Or facing a lot of challenges and changes today. So it's important to me that to have open mind. To when we interact with people, then also open to learn new information and adopt new ideas from others, and then to leverage those new information, new ideas, resource to help each other. So to me, that open mind is important.
Totally agree. Those are all very good examples. I think this is going to wrap up our podcast for today. I sincerely appreciate your time, your expertise, explaining the intricacies of pathogen control. So thank you very much. And this will conclude the podcast for today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us today.